Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Larry Seaford, professor in IOE, and I had the honor of serving as chair of IOE from 2000 to 2009. It's my privilege to introduce this year's IOE Distinguished Alumni Merit Award recipient, Merrie Williamson. Merrie earned both her BSc and MSc in IOE here at Michigan and has gone on to an extraordinary career as a Fortune 500 technology executive, speaker, and community leader. She has held leadership roles at Intel, served as corporate vice president at Microsoft, where she doubled Azure's global revenue to over $50 billion, and most recently was executive vice president and chief customer and revenue officer at Equinix, leading a global team of 4,000. She is widely recognized for her expertise in AI, digital transformation, and inclusive leadership, and has been a tireless advocate of for women, Black professionals, and underrepresented communities in tech. Merrie also gives back through community service, including board work and grassroots volunteerism. She credits her Michigan IOE education as the foundation for her career, and as a student, she was president of the National Society of Black Engineers and a leader in the Society of Hispanic Engineers and the Society of Women Engineers. Merrie has fond memories of IOE and its faculty who taught not only technical excellence, but kindness and grace. She is especially thankful for the late Professor Andy Crawford, who inspired her to think boldly, communicate clearly, and find joy in risk-taking. It is clear that Merrie embodies the very best of what it means to be an IOE graduate, an innovative problem solver, a transformative leader, and a person deeply committed to her community. We are so proud to recognize Merrie's impact and to celebrate the foundation she built here in IOE. Please join me in welcoming our 2025 Distinguished Alumni Merit Award recipient, Merrie Williamson.
This is an incredible moment. I am so grateful for this recognition. I'm so grateful to be here today. And I hope I get to do two things. One is share a little bit about my journey. And it's been really exciting to have a moment to reflect on where I was in many of your seats as a student, what feels like not that long ago, but closer to 30 years. And really, what does that journey look like for me? And where those roots and those inspirational moments start at the University of Michigan. So I'll take you a bit on that journey. But the other thing I'm just warning you, this is a love letter. And I mentioned Andy in my, thank you, Larry, who also knew Andy, in the introduction. But there are other people here in this room and others who have inspired me during my time at Michigan, and I hope whether you're a professor, an administrator, or anywhere filled with the university, thank you that your impact on lives like mine extend for decades. So hopefully you feel that love. So who wants to hear my story? Let's get into it. How the heck did you get there, right? So let me talk a little bit about my journey. Let's keep going. Oh, I have a little clicker. So I started, as many of the students here and probably many of you, as a STEM kid. I loved math and science. I knew and was inspired by engineering, that concept of engineering from a really young age. And I really was inspired by what I saw at Michigan. And eventually that landed me on a path to get to the C-suite. So I found an embarrassing picture. There you go. But I had a lot of opportunities in the time leading up to high school to really try to hone in on what I wanted to do. And I really thought NASA was an incredible institution, and how could I be part of that institution? And I even did a summer away at Space Camp. So I come to Michigan, find my way through engineering and eventually to IOE. And yes, that's me. And I'd like to think it doesn't look that different than today, but it probably does. I think that was like my senior year undergrad. And it led me to Intel. Andy Grove, who's an iconic leader, if you haven't heard of him, go find out about him. But he drew me into this company that was doing amazing things at the time. As a manufacturing, passionate engineer, I followed that path. I know we just talked about that. It's really important. It was really important to me to make that decision to go that direction where others were going to financial engineering at the time or consulting. I really loved the idea of making something. And I got to make chips, servers, and eventually data centers. Now this might be going fast, but there's a reason. I spent 20 years at Intel, and then I went to Microsoft. And if you don't recognize the gentleman on the left, does anyone recognize him? Okay. Satya, yes. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. We were on stage in New York City about 2 years ago talking about AI. And that was a great photo moment, but it's part of the opportunity I had as my career grew from the first 20 years to the next 10 years to be really impactful in not just a company, but in a moment in the industry and bringing even more people along, which led me to my last role, which was as a corporate officer of a public company. So it sounds like a great journey, right? Very inspiring. Probably looks like this. I started at Michigan, did some things, ended up in the C-suite, right? That's what I thought when I was in the shoes as a student considering how do I take the right first job to make sure this happens. And I'm gonna tell you, this is a false premise. In life, in professional settings, this never happens. And a bit of this, I wanna make sure the folks in the room who have that experience in life are all nodding their heads, but the young ones who are thinking, I need that first job to get on this, I'm sorry. I'm gonna tell you how it really is today. And I'm gonna start here, because I think I started understanding this at Michigan. So I went to Michigan. I wanna go to aerospace engineering to work for NASA to get on the trajectory, right? Makes sense. Well, I went to a couple of clubs and I went to meet some people and I just wasn't feeling it. And even to this day, nothing bad happened, but I just didn't feel that it was where I was gonna get excited. I didn't connect with the people as I met them. And then I kind of goes, oh gosh, I told my parents, I'm gonna go to Michigan. I'm gonna major in aerospace, what am I gonna do? And I started kind of having a moment. How am I gonna find it? How about the credits? Are my credits gonna apply? Where do I find, how long is it gonna take me to figure this out? And eventually I got to this point in the bottom of this curve where I said, all right, I've done my research. I'm certainly committed to and convicted. I wanna be an engineer, I know this. But I wanna do something that really applies to me, that I think a little bit differently than some of the folks that I talk to here. I have a wide aperture. I feel like these people in IOE are my people. I feel like the professors and the message and the types of conversations they're having, this is where I should be. And I have to tell you, and all of you are gonna nod and squirm, one big ego problem I had with it was what people said the acronym stood for. Right? Y'all know, because I asked students yesterday, I said, what does it stand for? They go, in and out easy. And how I was the best student in my class. I got the best grades. I'm the high performance. I'm not going somewhere, people. And you know what? I said, screw those guys. This is the right thing for me, right? And even though that seems maybe less consequential in the broader scheme of things, how many people don't go with their gut? stick with something that someone predefined in their head. So it's a little example of how I had to start proving out, like, hey, I feel like I'm in this trough. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna embrace this really bad discomfort and really look at what I need? And what I discovered when I thought about, okay, what is it that I'm seeing in myself and in the people around me, I started seeing a bunch of common superpowers. And again, as many of you know, like, your superpowers are yours, and they're your best elements of what you bring to the world, and it can also be your biggest blind spots. But bringing voice to them and understanding them takes time. And so when I was a student, I knew there were things that I really enjoyed, and I went in that direction. Really, that multidisciplinary aspect of IOE, the deep, like, I think most people outside of IOE have no idea how much math there is in this, right? The deep stochastic classes, linear programming, and I really, really enjoyed that. And then when I got to the right place, the curve started to go up. My first year, my second year, the experiential learning, the team and camaraderie of doing problem sets at hard moments with people who were like me but also brought their different points of view. People started driving my velocity upwards. My own capabilities I was confident in, but it was when they met the right people, from professors to students and others. And then I started getting familiar with that. So a little humility, I want to talk about IOE. And part of that comfort was just being somewhere where we're wired differently here. And even hearing it on the stage of what you see today as professors, solving complex problems, listening to big systematic issues, understanding how to think 1 and 2 steps down your customers. And so the way I simply describe it, and if you're here as an IOE student, embolden yourselves with this, you have supervision. And when I say supervision, it's something I reflect if I think about how IOE persisted the rest of my life. It was I could see problems in a really unique and wide way in any capacity, long-term in my career, different projects, different industries, different geographical locations. This is just something I brought to the table. And I share that with a lot of my IOE companions, and folks I see around the room are nodding their heads. Super intelligence, again, it's a little humble. I think it is a unique skill that IOE students bring and that the professors pull out of us. And I think that even the academic approach of, we believe that you can go hang in an EECS class, go get an A in that. We're gonna put you in material science. Yeah, you're gonna get an A in that too. Go take another couple classes in different, very, very, very hard subjects. You're just gonna do fine. Because we know that your capacity to learn new things is it's wired differently. And I think there's really something special in that for me, and as I adopted that in my career, and courage. A lot of the folks I went to school with ended up being exceptional business leaders, exceptional consultants, exceptional executives. And that comes from courage. Courage in having hard conversations, courage in pushing back with your professors, courage in keeping your team groups accountable for working. And I saw something special in the IOE community when I was here, where people would say very courageous things. We had, dynamic conversations with some of our professors. We stood up for ourselves when other people said this IOE easy thing. And there's some really special elements of IOE that I think that probably still remain part of the DNA of this part of the university. But let me tell you how I partner that with something else that I learned at Michigan, which was the people and community. And I'm not gonna go into all the places and communities and experiences I had at Michigan, but I'll tell you 3 things that changed my life. One was lifelong trusted connections from students. There's 4 people on a chat string I texted this morning and took a selfie. And I said, I'm gonna represent us. It was my problem set group from sophomore year to senior year. 4 people. We've gone 4 different directions in the world in our lives. We're still connected. And I think many of you who I hug coming in today, I now have your text. So though you'll be on strength. But thinking about how special that is, that the community of IOE, not necessarily sororities or fraternities or other places, was so strong that I built those connections. Larry introduced me and mentioned NSBE, and I'm gonna pause there and say how important that was for me, as well as SHIP during my 4 years here, 5 years here, that it shaped my life forever, because it helped me communicate and connect with other people who were navigating a new environment, not just college, but the world on our own, put names to this discomfort we felt. When I was in school, there weren't words that we have today, like unconscious bias, inclusion. These were not words. And I'm not being critical, it just was time evolves and we learn to start talking about things. And so these groups were the ones that really helped me understand, how do I process this? How do I succeed? What are the things, what's the positive energy I can bring to professional development, networking, structural ways that I can lead a community? And that was huge in kind of building that momentum out of that curve. Derek Scott's not here, and for all of you who might see him, tell him I called him out so he knows. But there was a gentleman who worked in the admin office, and again, like as a student, I didn't really understand or appreciate how important these people were. And one day he leaves me this is embarrassing, for his office leaves me a voicemail on my answering machine. These were actual physical machines, guys. And I went home and I pressed play and said, can you be on North Campus for an interview? And I was, I think I was October of my sophomore year and I hadn't spent a lot of time. Okay. And I didn't ask the questions. I probably should have been more curious. And I had an interview with Intel Corporation and it seemed to have gone well. I wasn't quite sure what it was about. It was an internship or maybe I don't know. I didn't ask. A month later, I found out I received the Intel Fellowship for the remainder of my time at Michigan, which covered all the costs of my education. One meeting. That's what happened. These things that happened here reshaped my life. I would not have gone into the tech sector if not for that one moment. I would not have been a Fortune 500 executive in tech in 2025 for that moment. And then the last piece, and I don't know where Professor Mertie went, but I did get to see him over here earlier. I'll tell us a great story. There were stories of professors, and I'm not gonna tell you they were stories I remember about the actual class itself. So 30 years later, I remember how they made me feel. And so Professor Mertie, he taught, believe, linear programming, and I'm still having flashbacks. Ilka, who over there, was in the class too. I was a good student. I was actually an exceptional student. I almost graduated with a 4.0. Went to this class, so I was pretty damn confident in my capabilities. I go to this class. I couldn't get one answer right, ever. My problem sets were always wrong. I came to the office hours, and it was a disaster. And Professor Mertie did an exceptionally good job of sitting and being patient and walking me through. And every time I came up and I said, I'm so confident the answer is 8, he's like, the answer is not even, it's like a triangle. Like, you're so far off. And what I learned going to his class every week and every office hours was the patience for people who didn't understand something, the care and the real commitment to being with someone who's trying to learn and how difficult it was for them. School had been pretty easy for me up to that point, and I didn't have a lot of patience or really empathy myself. I'm like, why aren't you doing well in this class? And I think about those little moments of care and compassion when no one's looking, and it really made a big impact on me. And I know Professor Mertie is over there, and people laugh when I tell this story. I've told this story on big, giant stages of how those moments shape your life. Carl Majeski, who's no longer at Michigan but still teaching, he was like the fun, cool professor, and he allowed me and another friend to be his graders. And the short story there is we went to Dominic's one day with an 80-pile sheet of graded papers. And do you guys know what Dominic serves? Yes. So for all the people laughing, sangria, really pink, red sangria. And it was a hot, nice day like this, and there was an accident. And we had to tell Professor Majeski that there was a horrible accident, and here was your sticky pile of pages. And he laughed, and he was light, and he said, I guess everyone gets a check this week. And that fear of going to somebody who's in a position of influence and power, who just made it easy, and the courage to have that moment. I had to do that in my career many times of going, oh, we screwed this really far up. Like, this was so bad. And that was the first moment I had to practice that. And one more love story for professors. I mentioned Andy, and I could probably talk about Andy for the rest of the time. Andy was really special. He came back to Michigan in service of the community and taught 2 classes, project management for engineers and entrepreneurship for engineers. And I remember everything he taught. Every single section. I can tell you what books we read. I had to do SMART goals. I didn't do them very well. In entrepreneurship, we had to build a business case. I remember the structure of the business case. We had to pitch it to a bank, literally drive to a bank and put our best suits on. And then we had to play Monopoly, which I told Karen earlier, I still take that story and I'm still learning from it. His impact on my life and these students that were in his class, we call each other to this day and say, Andy would be proud of me for what I did today. That's how big of an impact he made. And I also, students didn't want to take his class because it was a soft class. And, I've got to just get through my real core class. And that was one of the things I'm glad I went with my gut, and I knew this was somebody I wanted to learn from and something I needed to learn. And those 2 classes have been critical for my growth, and I go back to them 30 years later. So I took this, then I joined Intel, right? And I loved the idea of being an engineer. I wanted to get into a factory, and I actually got to, I think, the coolest institution of manufacturing, which is chip manufacturing in a bunny suit, in a clean room, whip turns every hour, and nothing can go wrong, and nothing can shut down. And it was such an exciting place to start my career. But again, about a year or 2 later, I was like, this is very repeatable, but I'm not learning a lot, right? Like, I'm hungry to use these superpowers. And I ended up, through multiple iterations of my career, looking for one thing, where no one knew the answer. What new business are we going to go into? And what role can I play there? And I sold myself as a jack of all trades. I said, I'll do anything. That entrepreneurial spirit from Andy came back in a big company. I'll start it up. I can play 3 things. We can be scrappy. And it allowed me a very unique opportunity over 20 years to be in the team that invested in the next big thing, over and over and over and over, and allowed me to use my superpowers of vision, of intelligence, and of courage, and practice it over and over and over. And guess what? It built my brand. People wanted to go for me for the next thing because they knew I would take a little bit more risk than the average engineer. They knew I could think engineering, but think wider. And they knew I had the courage to say, we're not doing this the right way. I'm going to give you an example very specifically. And I'd say this was one of the more pinnacle aspects of my engineering career at Intel. And I really stayed on the engineering track. I wanted to be the executive vice president of engineering or product. And I went into a group to own all of security for the cloud products for the company. And I was so excited. It was a huge job for me. And I look back, I had to lean on courage a couple of ways. I had to look at systems and my vision, and I had to look at learning something new. If you don't know security, most people in security are security experts. It's a very tight-knit community of people who speak security. I had not had any experience up to this point. But I knew that I'd been out with customers for a couple years, and they really wanted a better answer from our company. So I said, okay, how can I go in here and direct us in the right direction? Because it doesn't feel like we're going the right direction and meeting our customers' needs. Here's a little scary message that I got. The executive vice president, all that cloud business up here, she called me and said, I don't like this for you. I think this is a BS job. I think you'll be back in 9 months. I was kind of at the trough when you got that phone call, right? What did I do? I made a huge mistake. And now I'm on the radar watching my mistake happen. So I said, you might be right. But I think if I change the roadmap in the next 6 months for the company going forward, I'm right. So give me 6 months. She shrugged. I changed it in 3. 3 months, that's all it took to use those IOE skills to come in and look and say, here's the truth. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happening in the market. Here's what we've invested in. Here's an alternative. Let's go. I was really proud of that moment. But I also, can you guys see the link back to the things that I learned at Michigan? Can you see the IOE in that? Because I certainly can. So I have a lot of stories from Intel, and you'd probably want a bunch of stories from Microsoft because it's Microsoft and everyone talks about Microsoft. And at Microsoft, I actually was making a pivot in my career. As you know, I loved engineering. I bleed blue and I bleed engineering. And I was like, the end of my career, wherever I saw it going, was going to be on that path until it wasn't. Until I got a phone call that said, we need you over here. We need you to take that intelligence in this new market called cloud. It's going to be kind of big. And we need you to be in sales. And I said, sales, that's easy. Sure, why not? Sales is not easy, I found out. It's actually really, really, really hard. But what I brought to it was everything up to that point. I brought a technical mindset. I brought an IOE mindset. And it was a time when things were changing. So that worked really, really well for the moment. And I learned a new competency because I had the intellectual practice of learning new competencies. And it was a systems problem because everything was changing in the industry. All the supply chains were changing. The customer elements were changing. The core of the fundamental technology been around for 20 years was changing. That moment that I realized I could be amazing at something else was incredible for me because it really changed the way I saw my impact in the world. And that if I go back to why I joined IOE, that's really why. And I think one of the panelists said earlier is that changing the world through what our best practices are is really what we're all here for. So now I embraced sales and I went to Microsoft and started out that this big new cloud business selling software was $15 billion, already a giant number. And they had this aspiration to get it to 30 as fast as possible. And that was a big, big challenge. So I thought the stories I would tell you are like, how would you apply these IOE skill sets to that moment, that challenge? And I rethought and said, was that my hardest dip? Was COVID the hardest dip for me to manage through? Was the AI moment the dip to talk about today? And I decided it was very different and very personal. The hardest moments that I had to learn and lead and depend on what I learned in that core set of skills was actually an unexpected story. I was 1 year in the company as a vice president, not a corporate vice president, but a vice president at the time. When we're managing through COVID, we're stuck at home, I'm still learning the company's business, and the George Floyd moment happens in the world, and we all paused. And I did not know what to do because I started getting questions. I started getting asked to speak on behalf of. I started getting questions from people asking what they can personally do in their lives. And I was not prepared on so many levels. And it was deeply impactful for me because at that time and through the career I just described, I had been leaning into leading community, speaking on behalf of women in technology, speaking on behalf of African American and Black employees at our company. And even though I did that, this was completely a different moment where people were asking something completely different. Lead and help me understand through this. So what did I do? I used these same tools. I used courage, right? It took a lot of courage for me and a lot of, it was one of the biggest decisions I made to lean into that moment because it was a different energy I had to bring. The second was systems. I said, how do I get my arms around what's happening? How can I help make sense of this for other people? And then that intellect. And so what we did, and I should mention, I was leading hundreds of people across the globe. And it was truly like a call to action of people in Germany and people in Singapore and people who were like, help us understand and also support you as a community of our American colleagues. And I said, gosh, I'm gonna swing for the fences here and see if this works. But through the next months, we structured 8 different discussions with the organization. I had teams that were not historians, teams that were not set up for this, go out and say, we just want to have some fundamental information sharing, and then we want to just empower people where they live, whether it's Germany or France or the northeast of the country, to sit with us and talk about it. And we wanted to do is build what I think is the way to think about things. Do you have the information? Do you understand the history? Do you understand the systems? And then how can we positively have places to uplift each other from there? And maybe it's not solving, but it's at least getting our arms around this. And that's how I applied these really fundamental principles I learned here to a global, hard community problem. And everyone in this room knows this is a level of complexity that I don't think any of you would expect to be teaching a student. There's no one teaching this out there. But these are the types of types of problems that people in this room, and especially the students that are here and the students that you teach, will find themselves in, like me. And you're giving them the skills to do that. So you're probably like, why does this lady not talk about AI? We just assumed she was going to talk about AI for like 30 minutes. Like, where'd that go? And what about the future? She's supposed to tell us where it's all going, not where she's been. Go tell us about what to go do in the future. Tell me the job I want. I know they're like, oh, I wanted to know which job I should take. So when I think about the future, and of course I can pontificate of AI and I can pontificate on how the world will go, but I'm not sure. I think we're all seeing it evolve. But I know this. World that we live in today, where there's so much complexity, so much volatility, needs these three things. I think we can all agree. This is where this community, the people in this room, the people supporting people in this room, are going to be part of unique leadership in this moment. I guarantee it. And I hope you understand when you feel the world or your personal situation in those troughs, it's not just your superpowers you're bringing to that, but it's your people and community that you go back to. It's the ones that are surrounding you today. It's the ones that were there from your college years and everywhere in between. And I hope that equation is one that really resonates with you, because I've met many of you. I've seen your outstanding success, whether that means you've been here 2 years at the university or, like me, you're an alumni. And I know that this is a competency that these people in this department and the legacy is really poised to change the world. I'm going to wrap with saying thank you. If you felt a little bit of takeaway from my journey, great. I'm really excited about that. And hopefully you take a breadcrumb with you. But most importantly, I want you to take my deep, deep gratitude, because it isn't what I learned and on a test or a moment of saying I had a competency that I remember here. I remember the way it made me feel. And that's why I came back, and I'm proud to be here as a Michigan alum. Go Blue. Thank you.
Thank you, Merrie. That was amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and how IOE made you feel. Mm-hmm. So now we'd like to take some time and open it up for questions.
Yeah.
And let people ask some questions about the reflections on your journey. And I want to first start off with, and you covered this a little bit, how did you know it was IOE? What was that thing that helped you identify your inner IOE?
Yeah, I think I mentioned some of that moment of exploration and indecision. But the one thing I really thought pulled me to IOE was the multidisciplinary engineering aspect. I knew, and there were new programs at the time that were multidisciplinary between B school, and I was like, I don't really feel pulled to business school interdisciplinary. I loved having a little bit of opportunity to go into different elements of engineering. I mean, I still enjoy that today. And a lot of my career has been in different disciplines. So I started with manufacturing engineering, then I went to electrical engineering, software engineering, systems engineering, security engineering, And then finally, I'd say solutions engineering in sales and the field organization. So yeah, that was probably the big lens.
Great. I want to make sure we have time for others to ask questions.
I love interesting and thought-provoking questions. So feel free to throw anything my way.
Yeah. And then we have the mics. Yeah.
Hello. I appreciate hearing about Andy Crawford. Steve Pollack, when he was chair, asked me to create an alumni academy, and Andy was on that academy. That's how I met him. And he really wanted to teach a course in entrepreneurship, and so we co-taught it the first time because he needed faculty help for legitimacy's sake. But anyway, I can understand why you would be inspired by him. Amazing person. One of the things, he got an MBA at Harvard, and that probably was more useful for him in starting his business. But one of the things he said in the Alumni Academy was that coming out of IOE, he had taken a lot of courses, learned a bunch of technical skills, but mainly he'd learned how to solve problems, how to define problems, how to address problems, which always sort of struck me as curious because there's so many very technical courses. You learned the simplex method, you learned all this mathematical stuff, and at the end of the day, you're solving problems really using reasoning, not doing math. Mm-hmm. And particularly, I think, as you probably rose in the ranks, you were doing less math and more reasoning and more collectively getting people together and getting agreements and sharing visions. But I was just wondering if you've shared that with Andy, that somehow taking all these different courses that in a way had no direct effect on how you solve problems, but yet taught you how to solve problems, like linear programming.
Yeah, I would say my personal leadership style till today is going deep. I'm known for going deep. And I have to warn people when I come into organizations, and I come with a warning. She likes going deep. And I think part of what I experienced with these classes, whether it was linear programming or, I think it was EECS 101, whatever it was, 110, it was a muscle of going super deep in something and accomplishing how to unpack that problem and how people who look at that problem think. That was an important muscle for me to learn here that I applied over and over again. So when I went to Intel job maybe 2, we were investing in networking because the company thought, hey, we sell a lot of chips and computers. We should also try to sell chips to all the telco networks. And my first day on the job, I grabbed a college textbook from a colleague to learn. I hadn't taken a class on layer 1 to layer 7 networking. And by the time I finished that job 2.5 years later, I could hang with architects and engineers and have very complex and proficient conversations that help me make business decisions and recommendations. And so I think that it's the muscle for me that I continue to flex that's important. And I would say it's IOE, but in general, engineers, I think, I hire engineers to be good problem solvers. When I had built engineering teams, they were like, well, I learned, Python. I'm like, great, we're gonna reteach you anyway. It's how have you proven that you can go and repeat problem solve in different aspects of problems? That's what I need. Then I also need you to work well with others. Those are, non-starters. So I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Hi. One question I've always wrestled with is the type of people that go into IE or IEOR different than the people that go into other types of engineering? Obviously, education has a major effect, by taking the courses we do in IE. But I begin to wonder, because comments I've heard from other people, is that the people that go into IE are different than the people going to other engineering disciplines. And I wonder if you, from your experience, what your view of that might be.
Do you want to start?
Oh, no, this is all you.
I mean, I am my biased opinion is absolutely. I think even when we were students, we talked about the what ifs of the world. You know, what if I go into management consulting and go around the world and solve problems? What if I become an entrepreneur? What if I become CEO one day? What if I solve problems in hospital systems? Will I become a CEO of a hospital? Like even the types of expression of how people were interested in pursuing their path felt different than my peers who are still brilliant, and some of them are brilliant executives. They were deep. I would say we're almost like technical generalists as a cohort, whereas our peers are disciplinary experts. And some of those disciplinary experts are brilliant leaders and become brilliant leaders. But I think that was the big difference for me that I saw.
Yeah.
What do you?
I think we find ways to where we can improve systems, processes, and how we integrate people in those solutions. I think that we look at ways to take a complex problem and break it down into its elements and think about how that interconnection influences outcomes. And then we represent that mathematically with computers, with people in a variety of different ways. But I think that's what makes us different. I always talk about people having their inner IOE that reflects in them, and like the way you question, the way you think about things, and the way that you're always asking, well, how does this connect to that? Because I can't just think about this in a box. Yeah. And then other questions?
I hope you all get some student questions
There's-
reserved for me.
I know.
Okay, so I have a quick question. Obviously, you're very successful and you've done the IOE curriculum and you know what it's like now. With all the experience that you've had and what you see in the future, what is a class that you would add to that current IOE curriculum to better our experience in academics in our 4 years, to better suit us for our future once we leave our undergraduate studies?
Well, I when I think back to the most, I mentioned it in my talk, like honestly, the most memorable and useful classes were I'll say the Project Management 101 was the most useful class. I came into the workforce able to understand how to manage time, express goals, lead projects, communicate better than my peers, and I think that helped me stand out. I would say, and this is crazy, because if you would have asked me this, I would have not expected it, but the complementary classes, because I think you all are going to get, as an IOE student, really deep technical experience. It's wired into your education, but it's the other things that were maybe not as natural, I didn't lean into in university. Debate, rhetoric, writing for influence. I avoided English classes like the plague, like literally would do anything to not get in a class where like writing was a part of the world at all. And then I probably over time, especially as you become a manager or executive, you're spending 95% of your time reading, writing, communicating. And so if you don't take advantage of like core competency when you're at Michigan, you're going to have to learn it on your own, and you might not be in a place that's really ready to teach you, and it could really slow down and hinder the great ideas in your mind, the great talents that you bring. And so I would say those areas would be really important to lean into.
Hi.
Here's someone.
Oh, here's some.
All right, yeah.
Here's some. Who's got it, Mike?
Sorry. As a student who has like 2 years left or 3 years left, and seeing how you're able to get a lot out of your classes and apply it to your future career, what advice would you give to us to get the most out of all the classes we have and really use it throughout our career?
I think one of the things I find with, and it's students, but also kind of early in career folks, is they lack the ability to say, why did I do this? The how is more important than the why. And if I could have, go back in time and I took these brilliant classes with these brilliant professors, at the end of the class, I should have said, now how the heck am I going to apply this? Like, give me a story. Or even during the class, like, tell me one story that I can get my head around. Oh, because I think, I don't know which panelist was talking about the work with Michigan hospitals and nursing. Like, I think that's really like almost the circle that doesn't complete when you just take the class, get the grade, and leave. So one, I'd get really interested in the stories behind why am I learning this? Give me one real world application, or give me one customer that asked you, professor, to work on this, or somebody that graduated and this inspired their direction. And then two, bring it into conversations, especially if you're looking for internships, because a lot of times people are like, I took class, so you should hire me. I'm like, well, so did everyone else. What did you learn that actually could apply to the real world? And what have you thought through? Right? I took this class and I really, like, you get a chance. Tell me a class that inspired you. You should have an answer. Right? One of your classes that you took, you're like, I'm inspired because I did this work and it was really deep, but it could one day solve, molecular programming for, genetic birth defects. Well, that's interesting. It's interesting to hear that somebody who's in that space of learning is also thinking about how to apply it. Because I want to hire people who not just are good at one thing, but think about how could I use this? Hopefully that was a helpful answer. Yeah, and I'm just warning, every class might not have one, a clear answer or an inspirational answer, but you have to ask.
Thank you very much for the great presentation. As I was watching your sinusoidal wave with an upward trend, I did not see one mention about any gender biases that led to the dip.
Oh, yeah.
Is it you're lucky, or that industry you were in, or?
Yeah, it turns out I actually had a strategy, which is a whole different talk. Thank you. So how did you navigate the world as a Black woman in tech in 1999, which probably sounds ancient to half the crowd and like not that long ago for the other half.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just to paint a picture that what that really feels like. So when I entered Intel, who was hiring thousands of entry-level electrical engineers, chip designers, I would be in a building where there was, the only other women were secretary as administrative assistants or working on some kind of event planning. And often I was mistaken for those people. In floors I was the only non-male person. In the buildings I was in, I was the only Black person. So when I went to lunch, I could look around and see how unique and alone I was. And so I'm just painting you that picture of saying my strategy for the first 10 years was, and I'm saying this is a bad strategy, was camouflage and hide. So I literally had a persona at work where I had baggy jeans and oversized shirts and sweatshirts and very, just tried to be invisible, because that was my only tool to say, I need to walk into these rooms and I just really want everyone to take their biases of thinking I'm not supposed to be there. And by the way, I had a master's from Michigan and half of these people didn't have like an undergrad, like they had an undergraduate degree somewhere, not Michigan. So I had this idea that I could disappear and hope for the best and deal with the punches, like the unconscious bias, the harassment, the disrespect was part of my everyday. And I got through it by eventually finding a community of other women, of other people of color. And really the other thing that happened during my maybe tenure was finally I started seeing women in leadership who were willing to speak as women versus kind of hide themselves. And when that started to happen, I said, well, okay, maybe I can kind of uncamouflage myself a little bit. And then you saw more women in leadership that you wouldn't put up with women in the room being treated a certain way. And that really happened in the first 10 years of my career. I would say it's really disappointing, if I look at myself in reverse, that I used that energy with a chip on my shoulder, to be the best freaking engineer in every room I was in. I studied, and I stayed up late, and I stayed late at work, and I was smart. I was smartest for two reasons. I wanted to show everyone, and I needed to be. And so I don't want to gloss over the fact of how hard that was. And I'll tell you the truth, it's not gone away. It's diminished over time. I'm grateful for the acknowledgement of the challenges of women in tech, but the numbers are not that different than when I was here the first time. Women are doing exceptionally well getting into college, but they're not doing exceptionally well continuing that career trajectory in large companies and in tech. It's better, but it's still extraordinarily disappointing to see the lack of progress. So hopefully can talk a lot about it and the post-camouflage era of how I emboldened myself to really step in to make sure other women who looked at me were getting the message that they needed to hear.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Any other questions?
Somebody in the back.
Yeah. Well, they're right behind the pole. We can't even see them. Hand up.
Yep. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Thanks for coming to talk to us, by the way. You talked a lot about kind of how you've explored a lot of different engineering disciplines throughout the roles. I was wondering, when did you realize that you weren't afraid of learning? Or I suppose more so, when did you realize that you could learn anything or everything?
Gosh.
That's a good question.
I don't know, maybe I knew that from being a curious kid. I remember going to the library and getting out like 10 books and then being done with them in 3 days. Like that was something I really a core memory, and just kind of doing that over and over and over again. And really never being distracted. That for me, as I grew, into the person that landed on the campus here, I just felt like I could be smart and nerdy, that I could be cool and fun, that I could be athletic and I could bring all these pieces. And so I think that foundation of you can bring a lot of your uniqueness to the table maybe gave me that foundation of courage. I think if you didn't see that humility I struggle with, I think IOE people are the best. I think we're of course we can learn. And a little bit of it is, it's a gift of being so excited and learning that other people would be that's impossible. And I'm oh, really, is it? I took jobs that were ridiculous. Nobody takes a job to lead security at a company who's never done security. No one throws themselves into a job. I was not qualified for qualified in the sense of understanding a market, but I knew I could figure it out, and I was excited to learn. And so there's a little bit of I make fun that it's lack of humility, but I do think it's just trust that I've done it over and over again. I've taken the hard classes and I've figured it out. I'm going to do that thing too. And so far I haven't run into anything that I have had massive challenges with, except for Professor Murty's linear programming class.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Hello. In the back.
In the back.
Hi. Okay. Amazing presentation. I loved it. I think when you're talking about IOE, we look at challenges in a lot of different ways that are non-traditional. And we use that a lot for engineering problems and for technical problems. But I think we're at a time right now where things politically are very tumultuous. And I'm wondering how you apply your IOE perspectives to those types of challenges. You talked about it a little bit in your presentation, but I was wondering if you could expand.
Yeah, I think you remember I said it is a blessing and a curse sometimes, your superpowers? Mm-hmm. So, the things that are happening today, I felt happening like in slow motion years ago. And part of it is I think you just see the world through different eyes. And at the same time, the problems seem so disconnected from what I'm used to working in, which is companies with clear charters, and this is what we own. Like, this problem is not one organization, one group, one person. It's not just the things that we're talking about, and I think you're talking about. Like, the world is a really complex place, and we all know how complex it is, and it's not necessarily going the direction we all want it to go. I think the way I've found to apply my energy and time is to act and not get involved with pontifications and doom scrolling and all of that. And so I'll give you one example. I joined a board of a group in Seattle called the Northwest African American History Museum. And I joined in the year and a half after George Floyd, because I said, I am not a historian. I do not know what I'm doing. I do hope that other people who are experts get the support they need when we're building an educational infrastructure. And so on that board is how I use my special skills to make sure that the Northwest community of the United States has an institution that has smart, intelligent people bringing these stories together of American history and the part of American history that we haven't really built out as much. And so that's, I use my IOE brain. I'm like, okay, there's a systems problem. Where is the place I can go invest in it, time, money, and energy? And then do I have the courage to put my name against that and ask for money and say this is important? And it's the best tool that I have at my disposal today. And and I think that there are probably other IOE people that are choosing different ways of either going into politics or using their company to change the world. But certainly, I think I really am convicted that people who have these skills can see the systems and can at least wrap their arms around part of the system to drive to positive change.
Well, thank you, Merrie. Let's thank Merrie for this amazing.
One more.
There's one more question. Oh, okay.
Last one?
Last question.
Last one.
Last question.
We're still on track.
Oh, yeah. Real quickly. It looks like in your background you have some corporate, but also as of late some entrepreneurial things going on. Can you contrast those and talk about your IOE background? How did that prepared you for that?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects of entrepreneurship I can talk about, and I'm going to talk about the second. Intrapreneurship was a big part of my learning. I chose to be in big organizations and do really high risk, high impact things. And a little bit, that was my wiring. I wasn't a startup person who was going to go ask for $100 million and hope that it worked out. I wanted to be somewhere a little bit more structured to take risks. That was just how I was wired. But more so as I've been able to build personal wealth and say, how do I want to apply that wealth in the world? I've done that through, four things. One is how my family and I contribute money and time to nonprofit causes like the one that I mentioned. The second is that we invest in people and technologists in our community in Seattle. So we're investors in a VC fund that specifically supports AI and ML companies based out of the Northwest in Seattle. The third is I invest similarly in a group that invests in women entrepreneurs, because women entrepreneurs only get 2% of VC money, and that's been the same for like 15 years. So I wanted to act and do something about it. Mm. And then the fourth is, and you're gonna love this one, I'm investing in Broadway shows.
Awesome.
This is a new crazy category for me and my family. And it was open to me through some tech investors that knew that my family loved Broadway shows. And what makes it similar is that we dedicate some of our money to brilliant entrepreneurs who happen to be artists, who believe in a story and are just going really big, right? They're putting a show on Broadway that could flop. But their story is so important to tell and they believe that there's an audience that needs to hear it, that they're so convicted in that they want to, really put that whole group of people, believe in them and follow them. And I'm like, maybe that's not me. That's not my skill set. It's not what I'm drawn to, but I want to put some dollars there too. And so I'll give you an example. George Clooney had a show on Broadway, and it was an important story to tell recently in the spring. And that was really important for us to support somebody like him. And the next show that we're doing is led by Kristen Chenoweth. And I think having a woman who is, she's 57 years old. I can say that because she's like an official entrepreneur, and you can look her up. But I love that you have women leaders out there in the world doing things that we've never seen. And she's going to put this show on and headline it for a year, and it's going to be amazing. And so I hope that answers how we think about entrepreneurship and how it's changed through my 30 years.
That was a great final question. I'm glad we took that one. Let's thank Merrie for this amazing story. And I have a gift for you.
Oh, great. I'm taking the free IOE cup. I
Well,
hope
that
it was
is
for
part
me.
of, that's one of your gifts. And this is
Thank
another
you.
one.
Ooh.
Give you some of the
Swag.
IOE swag so you can represent us.
Thank
since
you.
This is your superpower. And I just want to, thank you because you're amazing. I knew Merrie when I was a graduate student and she was an undergraduate
I was
student.
little and she was.
And it's just like, I'm amazed. You're so amazing.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well,
Thank you. Oh, wait, we're going to take a picture.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I think this has been an amazing day. If you weren't excited about and if you didn't know before that IOE was #1 and amazing, I'm sure you know it now. You've experienced our alumni, you've experienced our students, you've experienced our faculty, you've experienced the way that we really are changing the future. This is the best department in the world, and I'm just really proud to be a part of it. I'm proud to have been born here as an IOE. I want to thank all of our speakers, all of the moderators, all of the panelists, our staff, our alumni, our guests, and our students who've just done amazing things to make this a wonderful day. So if we can just thank everyone right now. Yeah. As we look at these last 70 years, we're not just celebrating the past, we're really looking at what our bright future is. And really that bright future is powered by you all, right? Your gifts of your generosity to our program and our shared mission has made this come to fruition and also inspires us with all of our students. I want to take a moment to kind of acknowledge so many of you in this room who are giving of your time, your talents, and your treasures and engaging in our program. First, if you have provided a scholarship or a fellowship to IOE, if you could just stand, that would be great. Thank you. Second, if you have spoken in a class, met with students, if you could stand. And finally, if you've mentored a student, if you could stand. Thank you. Thank you. If you look around this room, you see the heart of IOE, right? That our future is built on you all giving of your time, your talents, and your treasures. You are what make IOE special. And you really are what has invested in the future that we see here and the way that we're going to move forward. As you know, I think it's been mentioned several times, these are interesting times I'll use the word interesting times in higher ed, but as we see from the stories that we hear today, that, we have a vision moving forward, and we're accomplishing that vision. It's a time for us to have bold ideas. It's a time for teamwork. It's a time for collaboration. It's a time in which we support each other. It's a time for IOE, because that is what we are about. So I'd like to say, if you feel moved to ensure that IOE continues its excellence, consider giving a gift of any kind, providing of your time and your talents. There's a QR code because we have an impact fund. I'm really excited to say that one of the things that we've kicked off this year with our impact fund is that we have a critical needs fund. So like as Harriet mentioned, we don't know necessarily the lives of our students, but we can help support them through these times. And so one of the critical things that we've initiated through the Impact Fund is our Critical Needs Fund, so that when a student has a need, they know that IOE is a place that they can reach out to and that we can try to support them. And so I want to acknowledge that some of the wonderful things that we're able to do with that fund. In honor of our 70th year, we are all about the sevens. So we have opportunities. You can give it $70, $700, $7,000, however you feel moved. And in fact, a great thing that the college has initiated or the university has initiated is a matching of 1-to-1 for people who are initiating recurring gifts. And this is up to like $100 per month. So it's kind of actually a pretty cool time that they're coinciding with our 70th. So I really want to take this time to thank you for both your time that you're giving to us, your talents. If you haven't felt connected to IOE before, connect now. Like I said, welcome home, and I meant welcome home. This is your home. And I want you to feel like you can come to the living room and have a seat anytime you want. The students are here for you. The students need you, and they care about your advice and your experiences. It makes a difference. You actually make a difference. So before we adjourn, I'd like to introduce Robbie Elliott. She's an IOE MSc alum from 2023, and she's going to share an exciting opportunity or announcement of one of the ways to stay engaged. So let's see. Oh, sorry, Robbie.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Robbie. I was a bachelor's grad in 21, 22, and then graduated my master's in 23. And so I say that because I would be considered a recent grad, and I'm here to introduce a fun opportunity that we're doing. You saw today there's a theme amongst IOE in general of the fact that we are very people-focused, and we are focused on making things better. And so this is putting kind of those themes into action. So we're launching this new initiative called The Power of IOE, which is being driven by a group of recent grads to try and increase the engagement of alumni, students, and recent grads within the IOE department. We saw today, again, highlighting some of the amazing things that our alumni are doing. But that being said, there are hundreds and thousands of alumni out there, some of which are more engaged than others. We know that IOEs are everywhere doing very cool things. And there's really the power that we all have in community together. And so we want to continue to improve our engagement of all IOEs everywhere. So as part of the IOE thing, it's kind of a three-phase approach that we're using here. We want to develop a mentorship program opportunity. So engaging kind of longer-term alumni and also recent grads to help mentor current students and younger IOE alumni for career support and any other sort of advice. Also, career support in general through mentorship or out through mentorship. And then also this sort of community engagement. So looking for ways that IOEs, regardless of where you live, where you are and what you do, how can we continue to engage like we're doing here today in other either formal or informal settings. So these are just some of the ideas that we're talking about and engaging in. And so there's a QR code here. Essentially, we're just trying to connect with everybody and then kind of feed through the best ideas and see how we can continue to strengthen the power of IOE. So if you get a chance, please scan the QR code. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me or Tyra. There's a big group doing some awesome things behind the scenes. So again, thank you for your time and hoping we can continue to engage and leverage the power that we all have as IOEs. Thank you.
So as we come to close, one of the things I think of IOE is you're all a part of what I call IOE's diaspora. It's the way that IOE goes out into the world and changes and touches the world. We hope that by coming together to celebrate our 70th, that we're providing an impetus for you to know that you are valued by IOE. We want you to stay connected. We value your talents, we value your time, we value your treasure. Please consider ways that IOE may share your talent and your time with IOE. It inspires our students. I'd like to give a really special thanks and a round of applause for all who made this possible. I'd like to thank Tyra and the incredible IOE staff, the STEP Solutions, Russell Video, all of our student volunteers, the students presenting their outstanding research. Honestly, this could not have happened without all of you. And also, so can we thank them? Sorry. I'll take a break. Greatly appreciate Dr. Warren Sutton for serving as our MC today. I assume he's somewhere in this room. There he is back there. I was like, he's no longer in space. And a big thank you as well to our planning committee, our IOE advisory board. If I could ask the members of the advisory board that are present to please stand so we can also thank you for all of your work. Thank you. This is another amazing way that you can give of your time. They do a lot of work to support our department. I'd also like to expressly thank that we have some members of our board that are retiring. John Owens, John Isaacson, Steve Afshar, and Kirk Wolf. I believe Steve and Kirk are here today, so we have some gifts of appreciation that we'd like to present to you. And thank you for your dedication to our IOE. We really appreciate the time, your consideration, and just all the effort that you put in. Thank you again so much for your service. Now, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Please stay. There are refreshments. There are posters. There's an excellent opportunity to network with your friends and new friends that you have made today. Find out firsthand how the exciting work in IOE is kind of shaping the world and fixing some of these complex challenges we have. Please watch for a feedback survey that we will be sending out in a week to kind of get your input on this as we celebrate this exciting milestone. And really, thank you. Thank you again for spending your time. Thank you for coming back. Stay connected. Hope to see many of you at the tailgate. And of course, go blue.